Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Citizen Development Week. My name is Philip Lakin. I'll be moderating this session. And the session you have come to join is Navigating Citizen Development Challenges. Just to jam a bit more on this topic and then introduce this amazing panel of speakers. Look, citizen development is still really new in the age of knowledge work and software development. And so there's tons of obstacles, everything from IT support to security to skill gaps to integration complexities. And so wanted to bring together this amazing panel of folks with all different perspectives from, the consulting side, the education side, the platform side, right? All on how we as an industry can push this forward and not only call out these challenges and better articulate them, but also talk about strategies in which how to solve them from multiple perspectives. So to kick off, just a bit about me. My name is Philip Lakin. I'm the co-founder and CEO of No Code Ops. We are a community of over 10,000 operations professionals that use no-code tools every day at their work. And we also built a tool called Operator that is the first automation observability platform for Zapier and soon Make in a few weeks. We're really excited about. So that's me. Kevin, I'd love to kick it to you to give yourself an intro, a little bit about you and where you're calling in from.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. Kevin Schuler, CEO of Quandary Consulting Group here in Denver, Colorado. This is now my second Citizen Development Week. Super excited to be here. Philip, great to see you. And Noel, everybody else we've got here. Awesome panel. I've been doing low code, no code for about 11 years now, working in different platforms, large companies, small companies all around, focusing heavily on citizen development and integrations.
Awesome. So good to have you here. And good to see you, man. Noel, would love to kick it to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today. So my name is Noel Carroll. I'm an associate professor at the University of Galway. Half of my time I'm working in research and the other half is in teaching. I set up the Citizen Development Lab a couple of years back in response to the growing demand around citizen development, low code, no code, in response to digital transformation strategies. So that's where I'm at. I'm delighted to be here and work with this really cool panel.
Awesome. Good to have you. And last but not least, Stephen, I'll kick it to you.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, so my name is Stephen Koning. I work as a customer success manager at BettyBlocks. BettyBlocks is a low-code application development platform that's focused on business-led development, also known as citizen development. I've done a lot of citizen development implementations for customers. I've also made enough mistakes to learn how to overcome the most common challenges. So happy to be here and share my learnings.
So cool. And so one thing before we just kind of kick into the questions and kind of have a conversation between us, we've got a bunch of questions that we want to talk to this panel about, but we really want to hear from the audience. So please make sure throughout, if a question comes up, throw it into the chat. You can do that directly on LinkedIn or wherever you're calling in from. We'll pick it up here. And I will have a Q&A at the end where we start addressing those questions and maybe weave some of them in throughout the conversation as well. So here we go. To start things off for our esteemed panel. Before we talk about how to get over these obstacles, let's talk about the obstacles themselves and call them out. So what are the obstacles that are typical in citizen development projects and how do they impact outcomes?
So I was last, so let me start.
Yeah, sure.
I would say not properly assessing and validating the use case you're trying to build. So I've seen citizen development projects fail due to the simple fact that the use case is not a fit with your technology or that it doesn't meet the need of your end user. So it almost always leads to quality issues, budget overruns, poor end user adoption, angry stakeholders, and so on. So yeah, think about a citizen developer, short on time, always busy and needs a fast solution. They usually cut corners around quality over speed because they need to ship something fast. Mostly, from what I've seen, that's because of expectations around how easy technology should be. Building an app is easy, right? So just give me the platform and I can go my way. But it's not just about technology. It's about finding a balance, right, between people, the skills, processes like validating solutions, and technology that's a good fit for your use case.
Awesome. Anything else there, Noel, Kevin?
Yeah, sure. I'd have to pick up also on the expectations, because there is this assumption that low code, no code allows you just to open the box and things will magically happen. And I think that comes down to a lot of how we advertise low code, no code, and citizen development. It assumes, or we try to pitch that things are done quickly, less effort, less energy, and so on. So I think that expectation, I think even from a marketing perspective, needs to be reset somewhat. I also think there's a major challenge out there now in terms of the technical expertise, because we often think about citizen developers having a lack of formal training, for example, in software development. But then there's also that struggle with the more complex aspects of citizen development. And now, of course, we're beginning to see that everybody's an expert in AI in the last couple of months. So there's a big push for AI solutions right now. So you've got this really added complexity, or this layered kind of additional complexity of AI. And many citizen developers out there are beginning to struggle with that technical complexity also.
Yeah, it's actually interesting on that front. I've seen courses pop up here that I find very interesting, like the No Code Operator course by 9X is a great example of just like going back to basics. I think a lot of citizen developers get brought in not because they're technical, right? Because they are the subject matter experts in their area, and all of a sudden they're handed these really powerful solutions, and they go from 0 to 100 super fast without knowing like what is a database schema. What is a redundancy, right? And that's fine to get started, but I think you got to go back and rewind some of those basics at some point to build scalable solutions here. So I think you're dead on with like that lack of technical expertise is like something that turns from a almost an asset to a liability eventually.
Of course, that opens up new
Kevin.
security concerns and so on as well. You know, like in terms of security, if you don't have the deep understanding of best practice around security, for example, that means your applications and indeed the organization becomes more vulnerable. And again, that opens up, has a knock-on effect onto governance and compliance and so on. So all of these things are interconnected as well. You know, we talk about industry regulations and so on. Now with the launch of AI legislation and so on, it's important that citizen developers develop an awareness, I think, for these things.
Yeah, and just to build a little bit on both of them, Stephen and Noel, is that having the requirements is extremely important, but also having your methodology, right? It doesn't change from full stack to low code. Is you have to follow requirements gathering, you know, the build, test, go live, minimal methodology that goes a long way. And then to Phil, thanks for the layup there on training is we actually have a 0 to hero program, which we started implementing, where we bring people in off the streets with no technical experience, because low code does allow us anywhere to bridge that gap between technology and the business, but they also have to have a business understanding, right? The technology is quick to build, but if you just start building out anything, next thing you know, you have the Winchester house and nothing makes sense. And so having a little business, right, a little business acumen tied to the power from no code, low code to the governance, to the security, you can have a really powerful team in a matter of months that have zero experience or background in technology. So we've seen a lot of success with that and customers alike as well.
So on that note, just as like, I really want folks to walk away with some really practical stuff here. What would you say for each of you? Requirement gathering just seemed to be a big thing here, right? What is one of your favorite questions to ask or to not ask during the requirement gathering phase? I'll open it up to anyone that wants to take that. So favorite question to ask or to avoid during the requirement gathering phase?
I would say, like, what does it solve? Like, what's the pain? That would be my main question. Why are we doing this? Why is this relevant? And what is the actual pain? You know, the problem behind the problem. That's where it would start for me.
Yeah, and then take it a little deeper to what's the actual ROI, either actual or realized, right? Because that's the easiest. We'll talk about this later in the panel, but that's the easiest way to get buy-in is if there's a real dollar amount tied to the pain that Stephen's mentioning.
Exactly.
Yeah, that idea of the business value, it crops up a lot, but it's something that I think organizations are really struggling with, the ROI. There's been a lot of conversations about moving from return on investment to the return on experience for citizen developers. I think organizations, from what I see, are struggling to answer that evidence-based or that metrics view of citizen development.
Yeah, and piggybacking on that, Noel, I think that it is crucial also, requirements gathering is one, but then visualizing it is step two. Then, you sort of talk about vaguely what it needs to do, but essentially, if you visualize the solution that you aim to deliver, you're creating a common language, and you're creating most valuable feedback that sort of takes away your assumptions and validates what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think to build on that too is the visualization of painting the picture, right? What is this going to do? How's it going to look and feel? And a more advanced citizen development technique is to build out a proof of concept yourself for the team, right? Don't build it out crazy. Don't have it, integrated anywhere, but spend a little bit, because stakeholders have a real hard time understanding what you're saying versus what it looks like. No matter how high up the ladder, actually, what I found is the more senior executive they are, the less imagination they have tied to it, because they're thinking so far in the future. And so when you actually bring them something tangible that says, here's just a single scene of what you're going to see or what the end users are going to see, it bridges that gap between the art of the possible and the reality of it.
Exactly.
Kevin, that reminds me that the one time I was pushing for the biggest citizen development budget I ever pushed for when I was at Compass, and what got us to $250,000 a year budget was simply our system that we built as a proof of concept, sending a text message that was beautifully formatted to a VP. Yeah. That was it. It was just like, he was like, I love this. This is great. Here's the budget. So this is awesome. So just moving on here, right? Look, we all know what the textbook says, right, around citizen development. It says the IT team gets together with the business operational units and they form a center of excellence. And all of a sudden, this magical thing happens where they integrate and collaborate perfectly, right? And we all know that almost never happens, right? Typically, these initiatives are started because someone on the business side needed to get something done quick or with little to no support, and then eventually IT gets involved. And so with that actual kind of way of things happening, how do y'all see organizations compensating for the lack of either early IT support in citizen development or even later stage lack of support in citizen development? And what are like the strategies to close that gap between IT being anywhere from unaware to not supportive to just like actually becoming a supportive collaborator?
I was just going to jump in and say, let me know where this fantasy land is you speak of, where there's a perfect unity between IT and the business. So I'll let someone else answer it a little more eloquently first while I get my thoughts.
Yeah, I'll let you know. It's usually in textbooks. Well, while y'all are gathering your thoughts on that front, right, in terms of like gaining IT support, one thing that I've seen work really well with like our users at Operator, right, who are trying to scale no-code solutions, is they are trying to do their best always to work in the way that IT works with certain systems, right? So they're trying to do things like document things and provide proper handoffs, right? So they're proving to IT like, look, yes, we're doing this highly technical, complex thing, but we can also handle our own. And so they're mimicking the strategies that they're seeing the IT teams do. And so when IT teams show up, it's not like, well, this is a crap show, right? Like nothing makes sense here. Like no one owns anything. There's no accountability. It's like, no, there actually is some accountability and documentation here. So mimicking what IT is doing to gain trust from them, I've seen work really well. I'll open it up.
Yeah, I think what I've been seeing in our research is it's the idea of actually you creating a clear vision that citizen development is not a threat as such, like to IT, but rather it's there to complement. In many cases, I think also the idea that I've seen some really good companies that try to create a support system for citizen developers. So they often try to create an internal community or a center of excellence, for example. So they try to look at dedicated help desks, online forums, for example. They have various kind of resources that they try to share, really to assist in terms of helping the citizen developers, like rather than having an additional burden on IT. So that idea of providing, say, training and resources, I think that's worked really well at some of the strong companies in citizen development, looking at ways in which you can share knowledge, celebrate successes, but also kind of learn from failures along the way and experiment. The biggest thing, though, that I see is time. The challenge that I see for citizen developers is oftentimes they're recruited, let's say, as business analysts, and now this has been layered on them as to be a citizen developer, but they don't get any additional time or any additional kind of resources as such to embed that process or to really allow some time to learn, like to pick up the speed in terms of IT knowledge and so on. So that aspect of time, I think, is a big challenge, because there's now new responsibilities on citizen developers. So like your day-to-day job is, let's say, business analyst, but now you're asked to be a citizen developer as well. And that seems to be a challenge in terms of it kicks back again on IT to try and pick up the slack. So I think allowing time, and I haven't seen companies that have managed it really well as such, but allowing for like a couple of hours a day or a couple of hours in the week to try and pick up and become certified in a certain course. So I think that's really important to factor that into citizen development, rather than just introduce a citizen development kind of initiative and then hopefully it will grow organically itself. Like, you need to allocate time, I think, is a key thing.
Rad.
Yeah, and I think, Philip, to build a little bit what you were saying is using IT's methodologies, go back to what I was talking about earlier, of following best practices, but not only that, but building into their backlog your initiatives you're working on. So there's visibility up the ladder that IT is supporting more innovation within the organization. It's a really hard bridge to gap, and it's in that textbook fantasy land that we talked about. But the reality is that it works, and it does take time, and you have to continue chipping away. It's just like working in sales is you're not going to get a deal the first time you pick up the phone. I mean, you might, but it's very unlikely. So you have to find ways to get IT to champion for you the initiatives that you want as a citizen developer or as a business unit, and then incorporate into their success factors how IT is actually encouraging the sprawl past traditional development or within their groups. And that's actually gotten us a lot of positive results within the organization, helping our clients navigate up that ladder through IT.
It never ceases to amaze me how important internal sales and marketing is. Like, sometimes I think as citizen developers, we think the solution is just so good, everyone will get why this is incredible and we should do it. And it's like, nope. You look at the problem from one way and the solution from one way, but IT sees a totally different picture, and learning how to speak their language and talk to their fears and tying it to their success is a skill and an art, and one that needs practice. So totally on board with that. Moving along here. So when it comes to IT, some of the stuff that they are worried about is complying with security, governance, regulation, risk, the whole GRC, governance, risk, compliance, right? All of those different standards, both that are, enforced both by internal policy and external, literal governments, right? What are some of the strategies you've seen work there that organizations can take to make sure that they're that these citizen developers who are non-technical in nature are complying with all of these things that they might not even yet understand?
Yeah, and I think this is a really underestimated topic because it already begins when you're evaluating a no-code, low-code platform, right? So you want to make sure you're assessing the governance capabilities at start in terms of oversight and permission, because that's where security starts. So you need to be able to see what is being done on the platform in order to control. And yeah, the other part, like a capability around role-based access. So when it comes to, for example, data governance, you want to make sure that only the ones you grant access have the right permissions to work with that data. Yeah, and I think that when building applications, it's important here. Again, there's, of course, in that imaginary world, but there's alignment with IT, especially around non-functional requirements. So by that, I mean that set of rules coming from IT that everybody needs to adhere to. So putting those into like citizen developer training programs to make sure these are consistently met, not only during building, but especially when you're gathering your requirements to already flag them, is like a real good starting point. And you always have like the good old trusted safety measure as of security audits, etc.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, you become a product owner as well as a developer, as well as a business analyst, and right, as a citizen developer. And so you have to remind yourself and others that you did the due diligence for a platform, maybe, hopefully, but no one else did. And so all the knowledge you have has to be then marketed. It goes back to sales and marketing internally to whoever is listening, and that sometimes is the really unsexy stuff to a lot of people, like governance and compliance and security and all of that. But it's not that difficult to take the documentation that's provided by the product or compile your own documentation, not only for the platform, but for your applications as well. If you can bring them, a perfect little handbook of here's what the app does, here's what the people do, here's how we protect it, here's how the data is all secured, here are the integrations we use, reporting, etc. And you have that available. Just think of it as an audit, right? Is if somebody wants to ask you about that, provide them immediately, so that way it doesn't look like you're trying to skirt corners or break any rules. And that has been extremely helpful. It does take some more time. It does take away from the fun part of developing, but it is necessary because you don't get to develop if they take away your toys.
So Kevin,
that's scalable, right? So
right,
you do that once, and then you don't have to control and audit every single application.
So that's such a good point, Kevin. And it actually talks to the prior question, right, around like getting IT trust and buy-in, because some folks who are citizen developers will go, well, I just brought this solution without really vetting it to my IT team, and we already started using it before we talked to them, and I wonder why they don't trust me, right? And so I think part of gaining that trust in the IT team is saying to them early on, hey, these are some of our business requirements. I've already vetted them to some basic standards that we tend to care about here. Are there any other standards that I should be aware of that you care about, that I can like rubric out and like do some of that research before involving you? And that one conversation will gain miles of trust and goodwill with that IT team that you end up needing to collaborate with anyway. So I think slowing down a bit before you speed up is huge. Noel, anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, sure. I think though it might be risky just to almost wait for a citizen developer to come and approach you to ask, have I missed any standards or have I missed anything here? I think it's important maybe to think about being a little proactive, because I see organizations are going to really great lengths, I think, in terms of trying to meet security and compliance standards. I think it's important, if you're considering adopting a citizen development, that security is part of the training, that is core, like up front. And by that I mean looking at ways to offer more comprehensive security training around what are the kind of almost the risk awareness side of things, because I think many might not just be simply aware of it. So I think bringing that to their attention, what's a common security threat, for example, what's best practice in terms of secure coding, are there any compliance requirements also as part of like the different sectors, if you're in healthcare, if you're in finance, or whatever that might be. So I think it's important that they're brought through that journey, that we don't leave it to citizen developers yet to go and make more time to understand the compliance and regulations and so on. So it's core. I think it should be part, almost front and center of citizen development training now. And I think also that the idea of having more, I suppose, regular audits, I think it's important looking at ways in which you can almost follow a citizen developer to look at certain points in the journey that they're beginning to struggle with, if they're beginning to look at the business aspects of like a new solution. What are the implications of that? What are the knock-on effects of actually launching this app? So again, like things around encryption, authentication, input validation, very simple things like that can really help to try and catch these issues as early as possible.
These are such good points. I just want to call out some things from the chat. Jason Miller from Creatio saying governance is key. Couldn't agree anymore. From both an early vetting standpoint and from putting it into practice standpoint. And one of my best friends, first name LinkedIn, last name user, is saying this discussions remind me of concepts from the Intrapreneur's Guide to Pathfinding, which seems like a great resource, and that visible guardrails are so important, but not for crushing the creative spirit. And I think balancing those two things, both like someone was saying the other day, like the freedom is in the framework. Like I think that is really key, and making these things easier to do well and to do right than to mess up as the person designing these solutions, I think is really important. So look, when one person gets a tool at a company, right, and gets really excited and starts building, we all know what happens next. Other departments find out and they start building, and they're like, wait, I can bring in tools, and they bring in other tools. And all of a sudden you have 2 different CRMs and 5 different ticketing systems. And this is like the Wild West version of citizen development. And none of these data products are talking to each other. And so, with product-led growth and all of these easy to hop on and very powerful platforms, and departments being in some ways more siloed than they've ever been before, how do you manage? How have you seen like companies manage that sprawl where it's like you both have the freedom to do things and experiment with things and integrate new platforms, while also like watching out for the needs of the organization as a whole, and like limiting complexity to a certain degree to make sure you're being as efficient as possible with the solutions that are being built? Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'll start this one. So it all goes back to IT, right? You have to get IT's buy-in at some point or you're going to get shut down, no matter how flexible and how innovative they let business units go, because it will always be a risk to some person somewhere. And all it takes is a regime change or something to happen, and your platform you've been building on for years is gone, and all this work you've done. So while I love the innovation aspect of multiple platforms and different CRMs and all that stuff, it's just not practical at the end of the day. And so showing maturity for citizen development, if you don't have a true citizen development group, showing the maturity that you appoint almost like a chairperson to work with IT to say, here's our vetted, approved tools, and then you build on those tools. For the most part, there's more low-code, no-code tools today than there were this time last year, which were more than there were 10 years ago, and there's going to be even more tomorrow. And so the good thing is that they're all relatively similar as far as the concept of building. And so if you are focused directly on innovating for the organization, it shouldn't matter. Now, there's always going to be pros and cons and strengths and weaknesses. And, we've got a product owner here representing. And so that's not to say that one doesn't stand out or a handful don't stand out. But the reality is the buy-in of the team is more important, right? And so how you navigate that and where it goes ultimately will be determinant of that governance pre-selection of platform as well, and then post-management.
Awesome. Stephen or Noel, Stefan or Noel, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, go ahead, Noel.
Yeah, sure. So some of the, I guess the integration complexities, what we see can pose obviously a real challenge, and in many cases it can be make or break a decision for some citizen developers that are exploring this at a very early stage. But often I think the complexities come back to simple things, or maybe simple things like the data formats and having the right protocols in place, complexities or differences in APIs or authentication or something like that. And I think there's a number of ways. One organization that we worked with just recently, they kind of started every project or every organization with the attitude of show me your data and we'll build the app around what we were kind of working with, rather than just going in there brainstorming for endless possibilities. So they almost tried to think about it as, let's look at the back end first and see what's happening there. And they're looking at ways of different data formats, structures, even semantics of a system to try and capture almost like the DNA of the organization, if you like. That's the way they viewed it, in such a way that then they can look at trying to alleviate or mitigate against any issues around data loss and data inconsistency and so on. And that seemed to be an important step for them to try and overcome these complexities. So rather than let everybody go wild and innovate for endless amounts of time, they wanted to see exactly what is available, kind of what's on the card that we can try to explore with. And for them, I think it allowed them to reduce the complexities that they were going to meet into the future a little bit. They also looked at legacy systems. So this was always an issue that cropped up where we are trying to integrate with legacy systems or outdated technologies. Again, the evolution of AI in the last year or so has really thrown a lot of new challenges there for organizations. Simple things like the lack of support for integration protocols, understanding what AI tool X can now achieve, trying to look at ways in which you can customize integration solutions and so on. So now they're looking at not only the challenges right now in terms of complexity, but also trying to future-proof what's coming down the line, because AI is evolving so quickly. They're trying to say, well, do I go all in at this point and invest like heavily at this point, or do I hold out and see what the future is going to bring me in the next 2 or 3 years? So there's a lot of questions in that also, I think.
Very rad.
Yeah. And on top of that, I mean, you should also, like, in the example of integrations, ask yourself, is a citizen developer really capable, skilled enough to work with integrations? And if you do allow them so, make sure we have a magic word that at Betty Blocks, we call it 1, 2, 3 reusability. So make sure that, again, in terms of scalability, like offer them predefined templates where security standards are already met as a mitigation, and make sure they're not reinventing stuff that's already invented.
Yeah, someone actually had said, I think Antigone said in the chat, demystifying compliance in concrete rules is a starting point for citizen developers to understand what they actually need to comply to. Yeah, the first step in compliance is knowing what to comply to. So making that easy for folks, especially who are out building in the wild and in a work from home culture, right, that we're in. I just think is, super, super important. So yeah, great point. And apparently LinkedIn user is Harleen Stevenson. So thank you for calling that out. Great. I love it. So look, we've talked a lot here about what to do as the citizen developer, right? And like the person that's advocating for these solutions and tactics, methods, challenges to overcome. But what about the leaders in these organizations, whether they're the business leaders, the business managers, the directors, the VPs, or the IT leaders, the people that aren't hands-on with this stuff, but have full veto power, right? What would you say are some examples or ways that they can be really supportive here? If you were to just talk directly to the leaders, what would you say are ways that they can be supportive?
I'd say first off, lead by example, right? Show them you've built your own solution. You won't believe how much I've learned from just doing it myself. And if you want to get people motivated and excited around citizen development, show the good example. But yeah, essentially making everybody excited by also explaining how it contributes to the organization's strategic ambition. So make everybody part of moving the organization forward, right? And yeah, motivate them by giving them the tools to turn them from problem owners into problem solvers, I would say. And I think essentially that's what citizen development is all about, right?
Yeah, and I think to pick up that point, I think a key thing, and it comes up time and time again, is actually setting that clear vision and goals of around citizen development. So I'd often ask, what is the problem to which citizen development is a solution? And sometimes people are just trying to keep up with the hype of new technologies and new things that they actually forget to ask the fundamental question: what is this for? What's the whole point of this? So I think it's important for leaders to think about how they can articulate and communicate a clear vision around citizen development, and also to have clear goals, because we hear about companies that adopt it, but there's no point of success. Like, what does success look like for citizen developers? Or is it endlessly developing apps to, I don't know, for years and years and years, which really sounds a little demotivating for an employee. But the idea of actually understanding what success looks like in the next year, or the next 2 years, or whatever, that also can help to motivate citizen developers to try and get a clear understanding of what's expected of them. And sometimes there is a sense that organizations aimlessly can adopt citizen development, but there's no kind of check-ins, or there's no points to say, right, we've achieved success at this point, now we're going to kick on and scale and so on. And that also comes, obviously, from a leadership perspective of, I suppose, providing new resources and support. Because again, like I said earlier, there is that expectation, okay, we're going to adopt citizen development, best of luck, I'll see you next year. And there's no guidance, or there's no leadership in terms of the adequate resources, the funding, the technology, and so on. So I just think it's important that if this is going to be core to the organization, that the resources also follow those decisions along the way.
Noel, are you saying citizen developers have shiny object syndrome? Is that
Very shiny.
Is that real?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
Do we love shiny objects? Yeah, look, to add to that point, I think that one of the really good things leaders can do is actually not fight against that kind of incessant curiosity, but work with it and capitalize on it, and find ways to kind of kung fu that into really awesome discoveries, and not let it derail things. Kevin, anything you want to add there?
I think just allowing the organization to have an executive sponsor for all initiatives, so that way they can advocate for you behind closed doors and get those pieces going. If they're motivated, one of our best clients, multiple clients, if we had their executive that sponsored all of the implementation that we did, actually used that as the platform for their career and stepped up multiple times in multiple roles because of all the initiatives that they were doing across the org outside of their normal day-to-day practice. And so if you think about it from a VP level or higher, is they have to do special projects in order to be considered for promotion, right? Past their day-to-day job. And so this is a great opportunity for citizen developers to latch on and have their careers kind of grow as well, tied to executive growth. And so looking at it just almost as a strategic role positioning for yourself as a developer or as a development group can go a long way.
Awesome. Well, we have a few more questions left, but I'm looking at the time, and I want to make sure we have time for all of the great questions that have come up. And by the way, if you haven't asked a question yet in the chat, please do. I'm going to try to get to as many of them as possible. But let me ask y'all this, just kind of go off the cuff here. I'm looking at some of the last questions. Out in the wild, right? Who are some of your favorite citizen developer influencers that you follow on social that you've worked with at a company that maybe isn't on social, but is just like doing incredible work internally somewhere that you just want to call out? I feel like one of the things with entrepreneurs is they don't get all of the credit that they deserve for all of the incredible things they do internally. And so they don't get to announce funding rounds and, huge strategic partnerships like entrepreneurs do. And so let's call out some of the unsung heroes, right? Who are some of the folks that you really love their work, that they're doing as citizen developers day in and day out? I will kick it to y'all. As everyone quickly scrolls through their LinkedIn feed.
One name that always comes to mind for me is Matt Hubbard. I've got to say, he's been a real influence to me on a personal level as well as professional level. So yeah, I'd have to call him out for sure. And all the guys at Shell, I think they do incredible work in terms of scaling citizen development or DIY. So they'd be the main two, I think.
Yeah, I gotta give Matt a shout out too. Yeah. It's he's dragged me into great corners of this earth for citizen development and low code, no code. So personally, I think the world of him as well.
And I think, Philip, you said at the beginning that this is an amazing panel. I follow you all on LinkedIn, and you have amazing posts around these topics. So upvotes for you guys.
Likewise.
Yeah. Yeah, if y'all, yeah, seriously, right back at everyone here. Like, yeah, if y'all haven't read some of Kevin is the blogs from Quandary, so good. I think anytime you ask ChatGPT a question about citizen development, it's just like going right to Kevin's website to to answer stuff. So cool. Yeah, and for me, I just have to say, like, gosh, there's so many folks in the community, in like the no code ops community that I'm just like a huge fan of. But some of the folks really, I think, pushing the boundaries. I would bring up like the guys at 9X again. They are both an agency and an education for citizen developers that Alex and Peeve and Jan are just really incredible at making this stuff really practical for folks. I'm just a big fan. Cool. Well, with that said, I'm going to hop into some questions here. And I'm going to start from the beginning. So from Steve Hawley, where would you place citizen development and low code, no code on the technology adoption lifecycle? So, and that's thinking about it like, is it in like the early adopter? Is it in like the, early majority, late majority, laggard, right? Like, where is it? Especially when it comes to like North America versus the rest of the world. So, I'll open that up to y'all.
I can only speak to our experiences and my experience in North America, but I love we've got representation all over the place here. So I'm actually excited to learn from this question. So great question, Steve. What I see is it varies per organization for sure. But as a whole, I would put it still early stages, just because we're seeing so much momentum and so much innovation through platform growth and innovation within the platform. It's not a lot of the even early platforms that were out there. It's not plateauing yet. Every release is an exciting release, and sometimes it's not a positive exciting, but it's just exciting, which means it's growing and it's morphing and it's evolving. And so I think we're on the rocket ship that's going to continue growing significantly, especially here in North America. I'd love to hear the international side as well.
Yeah, speaking for Europe, I'd say that if you look at it in terms of maturity, we see also interesting trends the other way around. So the IT departments looking for citizen development solutions. So I have a great example of a customer that is working in a decentralized organization and is 100% focused on enablement of all those decentralized departments and making sure that they provide everything a citizen developer needs in order to grasp from that. Really, it's growing. It's growing and growing.
So rad. I'm just going to keep going through these questions because we only have a few minutes left. But let's take turns maybe answering these. This is from Neil Miller. What are some of the funny stories that you've encountered as you're trying to encourage citizen development? Neil, I've got a short one. When I was doing citizen development back at Compass, we had launched this huge onboarding workflow to, I think, over 1,000 different real estate agents that we had just acquired through another company. It was our biggest acquisition to date, and I was charged with running this major onboarding workflow through the no-code platform that I had owned. And I got really excited about all of these stats happening live as like we were looking at open rates and read rates and action rates. And I was out at a bar with with our VP sponsor and a bunch of other folks. And I wanted to show him like, hey, look how good this thing is doing. And so I opened it on my phone and it was not optimized for mobile. And I must have clicked the wrong button somewhere and just killed the whole campaign. So it just stopped. So don't let hubris be the enemy of efficiency. I should have not done that. So hard lesson, but yeah, don't open something on mobile to show to an executive if it's not mobilely optimized.
There is no way to top that.
It was rough.
Next question.
Next question. All right. Let's take a look here. What are some of the top governance features that help to bridge the trust between IT and citizen developers? So maybe that you've seen in different platforms that you're really big fans of, or just general features like, role-based, role-based access controls. Like, what are some of the features that you've seen to help that?
Yeah. I mean, coming from a platform company, of course, I see that especially on the enterprise level, right? So they work with their, let's call it their Active Directory of all their employees with all their rights and all their permissions. What is a really interesting feature is to make sure it's called user provisioning. So you make sure that from that Active Directory, everything is synced to your low-code, no-code platform. So enabling that control and that oversight that you're looking for, to do that from one central place. The place where you control everything, I would say.
Awesome. Anything else from anyone? The two things that I'll call out that because look, as someone building a platform on this front with Operator that is very focused on collaboration, observability at scale. One is dependency mapping is huge. You can't know that you're about to break something if you can't see that you're about to break it. So mapping your dependencies either automatically with a tool like Operator or manually somewhere, or having some kind of dependency graph within the tool that you're looking at. So really, really important. And then one thing that we've seen users do manually in Operator with our tagging system is literally building automation development lifecycle stages. So what stage is this automation or app in? Or are we just, is it for personal productivity use? So it doesn't really matter to the larger organization. If it does matter to the larger organization, is this in the idea stage, in the testing stage, in the live but under review stage, in the maintenance stage? Are we building it again? Are we deprecating it? Having those stages for anything as low as an automation can be very, very helpful. Well, look, y'all, this has been incredible. I've learned a ton from this, even though I've talked with all of you, but I just learned a ton from this conversation. I'm hoping everyone else here did as well. If people have more questions or want to learn more about you, let's just do a lightning round of where people can find out more about you and maybe any plugs for anything that you're working on or things that are coming up. Stefan, I'll start with you.
Sorry, so where you can find me?
Yeah, where people can find you, and just any plugs for anything that you're working on.
Yeah, so I'm creating a series of blogs related to the application delivery lifecycle. So getting from an idea to something in maintenance is quite the journey. So follow me on LinkedIn, where I will share my blogs with you and my learnings.
Awesome. Noel?
Yeah, so we're continuously working on research. A focus for us right now is looking at citizen development beyond the organization into a community environment, looking at how communities are addressing sustainable development goals, for example, using low code, no code, and citizen development. So yeah, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to give updates along the way.
Awesome. And Kevin?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best place for me personally. Quandary Consulting Group, quandarycg.com has all of our blogs, knowledge bases, and the like. And keep an eye out for our citizen development program that we're working on. Like I said, third class, massive success, and we're going to start publishing it out to the public.
Cool. Rad. And once again, my name is Philip Lakin. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter, and also you can join our free community of operations professionals in no-code at nocodeops.com. A major thank you to everyone that came here. As Matt Hubbard, the legend, the man, the myth, the legend in the chat said, low-code, no-code's early majority. Citizen developers are still the early adopters, so that we're in the early part of, we haven't crossed the chasm yet, but with the help of amazing platforms like Citizen Developer Week, with all of the work our panelists are doing, and with everyone just participating in this conversation, this is the kind of work and advocacy that gets us all to the next level, to cross that chasm, to get this out to the wider audience. So thank you all for your continued support, and looking forward to seeing you in the no-code, low-code trenches. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Thanks.